I sent an intimate video of my boyfriend to my friends to win a fight. Now he's gone, and I realize I didn't win, I detonated a nuke. It was 1 a.m., and I was fueled by 2 glasses of cheap wine and 3 days of simmering rage. My fingers, almost with a mind of their own, flew to my camera roll. I found the video, the one where Brian looked so goofy and clumsy during a moment that should have just been ours. With a venomous satisfaction, I sent it to my group chat of my closest friends, captioning it, "Look at this pathetic loser. This is what he gets for messing with me." For a solid, glorious minute, I felt powerful. I felt like I'd finally won our stupid Cold War. But then the read receipts piled up, followed by a wall of absolute silence. The victory evaporated, replaced by an icy dread that sobered me up faster than a bucket of cold water. You're probably thinking I'm a monster. And maybe I am, but you have to understand, you don't know what it's like to live with a ghost. You don't know the Brian I've been living with for the last year. Our relationship didn't start this way. For the first 2 years, he was my everything. He was the man who, after I mentioned offhandedly that I missed a specific type of pastry from my childhood bakery, spent a whole Saturday driving to 3 different places until he found a near-perfect match. He was warm, attentive, the kind of guy who'd listen to my rambling work stories with genuine interest. We built a life in this apartment that felt like a fortress against the world. But slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, something shifted. Brian doesn't do fights. He doesn't yell, he doesn't scream, he doesn't even really argue. Instead, he punishes. He has perfected the art of passive aggression into a form of psychological warfare, and his weapon of choice is silence. It's not a peaceful, comfortable silence. It's a heavy, suffocating blanket of indifference that sucks all the air out of a room. It's a silence that screams, "You are not worthy of my words. You do not exist." It would start over the smallest things. I'd complain that he left his wet towel on the bed again, and instead of a simple, "Sorry, my bad," he would just shut down. He'd still be there physically, watching TV or scrolling on his phone, but he'd be gone. I'd become a piece of furniture. If I asked him a direct question, I'd get a clipped, one-word answer. Hungry? No. Did you get the mail? Yes. Last year, after a minor disagreement about weekend plans, he forgot our anniversary. He didn't just forget. He let me get dressed up for the dinner I thought we were having, only to look up from his laptop when I was standing by the door and ask, "Oh, are you going out?" This silence is my personal kryptonite. I grew up in a household where affection was transactional, and silence was the ultimate punishment for any perceived misstep. Being ignored, being made to feel invisible, it doesn't just make me angry. It triggers a deep, primal panic in me. My chest gets tight, my heart starts racing, and I feel this frantic, desperate need to get a reaction, any reaction, just to prove I'm still here. He knows this. I've told him, crying during our good times, how much it destroys me. And yet, he kept using it, like a surgeon pressing on a nerve he knows will cause the most pain. Our life became a torturous cycle. A minor issue would arise, he'd initiate the silent treatment, I'd spend days trying to break through it, first calmly, then pleadingly, then angrily. I'd feel myself getting louder and more frantic as he became colder and more distant. Eventually, I would break, apologizing for everything, even things that weren't my fault, just to hear his voice again. We'd have a few days of fragile peace, and then the cycle would repeat. This last time, the fight that led to all this, it was so stupidly trivial. We were supposed to go to our friend's place for a game night at 7 p.m. He decided to go to the gym after work. 7:30 came and went. Then 8 o'clock. He finally walked in at 8:15, not a hint of an apology, just a casual, "Hey, ready to go." By the time we got there, everyone was already halfway through dinner. The awkward silence as we found seats was humiliating. He, of course, was perfectly charming, laughing and blaming the traffic, making me look like the uptight one for being visibly annoyed. I waited until we were in the car. "It would be nice if you could respect my time and our friend's time for once," I said, my voice tight. That's all it took. The mask of charm dropped. The silence began. That was Saturday. By Tuesday morning, I was a wreck. He was moving around the apartment like I wasn't there, making his coffee, getting ready for work, the whole time looking right through me. I was begging, pleading, "Brian, please. Can we just fight this out? Yell at me, I don't care, just say something." He just calmly picked up his keys and without a single glance in my direction, walked out the door. He was punishing me, and I was desperate to make him feel something, anything at all. I wanted to find a weapon that was louder than his silence. That night, I couldn't stand the oppressive silence of our apartment for another second. It felt like the walls were closing in, mocking me with the echoes of the laughter we used to share. Every tick of the clock was a reminder of his absence, his deliberate withdrawal. I fled, texting my friends and arranging to meet at a dimly lit bar downtown, a place where the loud music could drown out the noise in my head. The moment I slid into the booth, the dam broke. I vented everything: the late arrival, the humiliation at our friend's dinner, the 3 agonizing days of being treated like a ghost. Fueled by their sympathetic outrage and a steady stream of vodka sodas, my anger morphed into a righteous crusade. My friends, who had only ever seen the charming side of Brian and heard my tearful accounts of the silent treatment, were my echo chamber. "He can't keep doing this to you, Em," my friend Maya said, her brow furrowed with concern as she rubbed my back. "That's not just him being moody. It's emotional abuse, straight up." "Seriously," another, Chloe, chimed in, swirling the ice in her drink. "He acts like a petulant child. You need to give him a taste of his own medicine. Show him you're not just going to sit there and take it." Their validation was like gasoline on a fire. I wasn't just a woman overreacting, I was a victim fighting back. The group chat on my phone, which included a couple of friends who couldn't make it, was buzzing with the same energy. It was a chorus of "you deserve so much better" and "what a manipulative jerk." In that warm, intoxicating bubble of collective indignation, I felt powerful, justified. My pain wasn't just my own, it was a shared grievance. We were a united front against the tyranny of silent men. As the night wore on and the drinks kept coming, the suggestions got bolder. "You should pack a bag and stay with me for a week, see how he likes being truly alone," Maya offered. But that felt too passive. I didn't want him to be alone, I wanted him to hurt. I wanted to pierce through his infuriating, condescending calm. I wanted a reaction. Then Chloe, laughing after I described another instance of his silent punishment, said the fateful words, "Girl, you should really put him on blast. Give him something to actually be silent about." It was meant as a joke, a throwaway line in a drunken rant session. But the idea, like a toxic seed, latched onto my brain. Blast him. Humiliate him. Make him feel as small and powerless as he made me feel every time he looked through me. My mind, clouded by alcohol and a desperate need for retribution, immediately went to the video. It was a silly, private moment from our vacation last summer. We were tipsy on cheap sangria, trying to recreate a dance from an old movie in our hotel room. He was being goofy, trying to dip me, but his foot slipped on the tile floor. He stumbled, lost his balance, and landed in a clumsy, flailing heap on the bed, laughing so hard he was crying. I was laughing right along with him. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated joy and intimacy. It was embarrassing, and it was completely ours. But in that moment, sitting in that dark bar, it became my weapon. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking slightly with a potent mix of adrenaline and rage. I wasn't thinking about the consequences, about trust, or respect, or the sanctity of what we shared. I was only thinking of his face when he'd walked past me that morning, his eyes as cold and empty as a stranger's. "I'm going to make him see me," I slurred to my friends, holding up the phone as if it were a trophy. "I'm going to make him listen." I scrolled to the video, the image of his laughing, completely unguarded face filling the screen. This was the perfect punishment. His silence was about control, about presenting a flawless, untouchable exterior to the world. I was about to shatter it into a million pieces. I typed out the caption, my thumbs jabbing at the screen, "Look at this pathetic loser. This is what he gets for messing with me." Without a second thought, without a single shred of doubt, I hit send. For a few seconds after I sent it, the group chat lit up. A couple of laughing crying emojis appeared, then a shocked face emoji from Maya. But then, almost immediately, the reactions stopped. The rapid-fire messages that had been fueling me all night ceased. The silence that I had been running from in my apartment had now followed me into the digital world, and it was somehow even more terrifying. The emojis just sat there under the video, a monument to my catastrophic misjudgment. My drunken bravado began to curdle into a sickening anxiety. It was Olivia, the quietest and most level-headed one in our group, who broke the silence. A private message from her popped up on my screen. "Emily, what the hell did you just do? Delete that now." My heart hammered against my ribs. Delete it? But it was too late. I could see the seen by everyone notification. The damage was done. And then a far colder, more horrifying thought struck me, a thought that the alcohol had conveniently suppressed until now: Brian's iPad. We had our photos synced to the same iCloud account. He got a notification for every single picture or video I saved or shared. He might have already seen it. The cab ride home was a blur of panic. I rehearsed a dozen different scenarios in my head. Maybe he'd be furious, yelling, screaming. Good, at least it would be a sound. Maybe he'd be hurt, crying. I could fix that. I could apologize, tell him I was drunk and stupid. We could have a real, messy, human fight, and then we could make up. Anything was better than the silence. When I stumbled through the door, the apartment was dark. Not just dark, but still. The hum of the fridge seemed unnaturally loud. I saw his silhouette on the couch, backlit by the faint glow of a street lamp outside. The TV was off. He wasn't scrolling on his phone. He was just sitting there in the dark, waiting. My throat went dry. "Brian," I whispered. He didn't turn his head. His voice, when it came, was unnervingly calm, devoid of any emotion at all. It was a voice I had never heard before. "You're home," he said. That was it. Not "where have you been?" Not "what the fuck did you do?" Just a flat, dead statement of fact. The calmness was 1,000 times more chilling than the rage I had prepared for. I stood frozen in the hallway, the weight of my actions crashing down on me with the force of a physical blow. I had wanted a reaction. I had gotten one. This was the sound of an explosion in a vacuum, utterly silent, utterly devastating. I woke up the next morning with a pounding headache and a mouth that felt like sandpaper. For a blissful, ignorant second, I'd forgotten everything. Then the memory of the video, of his voice in the dark, rushed back in, and I sat bolt upright in bed. The space next to me was empty and cold. I glanced at the clock, 9:30 a.m. He was usually long gone for work by now, but a knot of dread tightened in my stomach. Something felt wrong. "Brian," I called out, my voice raspy. The only answer was the silence I had once craved to break. I stumbled out of the bedroom, my heart starting to race. I told myself he was just giving me the silent treatment again, that he'd gone to work early to avoid me. But when I walked past the hall closet, I noticed the door was slightly ajar. His favorite coat, the navy pea coat he wore every single day, was gone. Panic began to set in. I rushed to his side of the bedroom closet. It was half empty. All his work shirts, his jeans, the sweaters I'd bought him for Christmas, all gone. A neat, empty row of hangers was all that remained. I ran to the bathroom. His toothbrush was missing from the holder. His razor wasn't on the shelf. His bottle of cologne was gone. It was like he was being systematically erased from our life. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my phone and dialed his number. It rang once, then went straight to voicemail. "The number you have dialed is not accepting calls at this time." Blocked. I tried WhatsApp. One gray tick. Blocked. I went to Instagram to send him a DM. His profile, once filled with pictures of us, of our travels, of the stupid cat we'd adopted together, was gone. User not found. Blocked. Blocked everywhere. He hadn't just left for the day, he had vanished. There was no note on the kitchen counter, no angry text message, no final, dramatic confrontation. He had just disappeared. He had taken his things, scrubbed himself from my digital life, and walked out, leaving behind nothing but a gaping, echoing void where our shared existence used to be. I had spent days screaming for a reaction, and he had finally given me one. He had responded to my desperate, childish plea for noise with the most profound and absolute silence imaginable. He ghosted me from our own life. The first 24 hours were a blur of pure, unadulterated panic. I was a machine of denial, cycling through the same useless actions. I called his number 100 times, as if the sheer force of my will could break through the block. I messaged our mutual friends, my texts becoming increasingly frantic and incoherent. "Have you seen Brian? Is he okay? Did he say anything?" The replies, when they came, were uniformly useless and deeply unsettling. Most were some variation of "no, sorry, haven't heard from him." But it was the tone that scared me. It was clipped, distant. There was no "OMG, what happened? Is everything all right?" It was the kind of awkward, non-committal response you give when you absolutely do not want to get involved. I was no longer just Emily, their friend. I was one half of a messy breakup they wanted no part of. My own friends, the ones from the group chat, were even worse. The chat itself had gone completely dead. My desperate messages of "guys, he's gone, he took his stuff and left" were met with a few sympathetic but useless heart emojis. No one called. No one offered to come over. It was like I had detonated a bomb and they were all afraid of the radioactive fallout. Finally, on the second day, Olivia called. I answered on the first ring, desperate for an ally, for someone to tell me this was all a huge misunderstanding. But her voice wasn't warm or comforting. It was weary, heavy with a disappointment that felt like a physical slap. I don't know what to say," she began, and my hope shriveled. "Is he with you? Did he call you?" I pleaded. There was a long pause. "No, but his sister called me. She wanted to know if I knew what was going on. Apparently, he showed up on her doorstep at 5 a.m. yesterday with 2 suitcases." I choked back a sob. "What did he say?" "He didn't have to say much, Emily." Olivia's voice was sharp now, the disappointment replaced by a bluntness that cut right through my self-pity. She saw the video. Chloe showed it to her boyfriend, who's friends with Brian's sister's husband. "It got around. You didn't just send that to us, you sent it to the whole world." She took a breath. "What you did. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't winning a fight. It was a disgusting, humiliating betrayal. You took something private and beautiful and you used it to publicly shame him. You destroyed his trust in you, completely. What did you think was going to happen?" Her words hit me harder than any of Brian's silence. For 2 days, I had been the frantic victim, the abandoned girlfriend. But hearing it laid out so plainly, so clinically from someone who was supposed to be on my side, I couldn't hide from the truth anymore. I wasn't the victim. I was the villain. I was the one who had planted the bomb. And this silent, empty apartment wasn't his punishment to me. It was the crater I had created all by myself. A week passed. A silent, agonizing week. I existed on coffee and the stale hope that he'd crack, that he'd call me to scream, to demand an apology, anything. But there was nothing. The silence from his end was absolute. Desperate for some sign of him, for some clue, I started cleaning the apartment, a frantic, meaningless activity to keep my hands and mind busy. That's when I found it. He used the bottom drawer of his desk for miscellaneous things, old cables, instruction manuals, paperwork he meant to file. I was pulling it all out to throw away when my fingers brushed against a small, velvet-covered box tucked deep in the back corner. It wasn't a ring box. It was flatter, wider. My heart stopped. I opened it. Inside, nestled on a satin lining, was a delicate silver necklace with a small, intricate charm of the Lisbon tram, a replica of the ones we'd obsessed over in travel documentaries. My breath hitched. Tucked beneath the necklace was a folded piece of paper. It was a printout, an itinerary from a travel website. A 7-day trip to Portugal, booked for the first week of October. My birthday. Flights, a hotel in Lisbon, a second booking for a small guest house in Sintra, the place I'd once said was my dream destination. The purchase date on the receipt was last Friday, the day before our stupid, insignificant fight even began. He hadn't been ignoring me. He hadn't been punishing me out of spite. He had been planning the most thoughtful, perfect surprise of my life. The whole time I was stewing in my own paranoid rage, convinced he was a cold, unfeeling monster. He was holding this secret, this beautiful gift, waiting for the right moment. And I, in my blind, selfish, traumatized fury, had mistaken his quiet anticipation for cold indifference. I had mistaken a man planning our future for an enemy in a war that only I was fighting. I sank to the floor, the necklace in my hand, the itinerary fluttering to the ground. The weight of my mistake wasn't just heavy anymore, it was crushing. I hadn't just pushed him away. I had taken a sledgehammer to the beautiful future he was secretly building for us. It took another month for me to even begin functioning again. I started seeing a therapist, someone to help me unpack the lifetime of baggage that made me equate silence with abandonment. I finally began to understand that my reaction wasn't just about Brian. It was about a deep-seated fear that I had weaponized against the person who least deserved it. After weeks of work, I wrote a letter. Not an email or a text, but a real, pen-on-paper letter. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to write. I didn't make excuses. I didn't blame my past or his passive aggression. I just owned my actions, every ugly, vindictive one. I apologized for betraying his trust, for humiliating him, for turning a moment of our shared joy into a weapon of public shame. I told him I finally understood the magnitude of what I had destroyed. I didn't ask for forgiveness or for a second chance. I just wanted him to know that I saw the truth. I gave the sealed envelope to Olivia, the only bridge between our two shattered worlds, and asked her to please, if she could, get it to him. Another week of agonizing silence followed. Then, one evening, my phone buzzed with a message from a number I didn't recognize. My heart leaped into my throat. It was just one sentence. "I got the letter, I wish you well." That was it, no anger, no forgiveness, no lingering questions, just a polite, sterile, soul-crushing period at the end of our story. I stared at the words on the screen, reading them over and over. "I wish you well." It was the kind of thing you say to a former colleague or a distant acquaintance. It was final. It was absolute. He had moved on. I had been so desperate to win the battle, to break his silence, to force a reaction, and I had succeeded. I got my reaction. And now, all I have is the silence. The crushing, permanent silence of a future that will never happen.